Good morning, everyone. Well, definitely I've figured out I've got to make these little videos shorter in order to keep you interested in what I'm trying to say. So I'd like to talk a little about Crossing Brooklyn Ferry, a different kind of poem by Walt Whitman, but one that introduces several of the same themes that we saw in Song of Myself. On the screen before you is the opening canto of this poem, and for a moment I'd like to dwell on the very first line. I have highlighted the line, flood tide below me. And then I'm going to come over here and highlight this, I see you face to face. We have to have a literal context for those images, I think, before we can delve into what they might mean symbolically. But the title of the poem, Crossing Brooklyn Ferry, we need a little bit of historical context to know that this is pre-Brooklyn Bridge. Today we watch Seinfeld and watch the news and whatnot, and we see Brooklyn Bridge as the monumental landmark in New York City. But Whitman's writing at a time before that bridge was built, and the way that people got from one place to the other was riding the ferry in this mass of humanity. And remember, we had said, of course, that New York City was kind of the entry point, especially Ellis Island, for floods and floods of immigrants coming to the New World through the late 1700s and most definitely the first half of the 1800s. That is still so, but there are some other entry points too now. So Whitman's on the ferry, and he is looking at this mass of humanity, and of course at the water too. So this flood tide below me can make reference to the water, but it is also making reference to these floods of people that he sees going from place to place. And this, I see you face to face. The next line also is important. Clouds of the west sun there, half an hour high. I see you also face to face. So that image puts humanity on par, on this level playing field with nature itself. That these crowds of men and women going wherever they're going, work, whatever, are just as natural and as important in the grand scheme of the universe as the sun rising and setting. And so then I'm dropping down here to more literal context again. Crowds of men and women attired in the usual costumes. How curious you are to me. On the ferry boats, the hundreds and hundreds that cross, returning home, are more curious to me than you suppose, and you shall cross from shore to shore years hence, and you that shall cross years from shore to shore years hence are more to me and more in my meditations than you might suppose. So that opening stanza then introduces this meditative theme. The poem is, of course, an occasional poem in that he's writing and recording a precise occasion of the crossing on the ferry, but we also see that this is going to be a meditative, philosophical focus on humanity's place in the universe. The next little canto, of course, continues that theme, but check this out. The opening line of this section, the impalpable sustenance of me from all things at all hours of the day. Wow, that's such a great line, but we might misread it just a little bit. The poet seems to be saying here that all of these things that he sees and experiences sustain him. He can't put his finger on it precisely. I guess that was cliche, but it doesn't have exactly physical form. It's not like food and drink. It's impalpable, untouchable, but it's this awareness of this scheme of the universe, and he sees that as simple and compact and so thoughtfully joined that he disintegrates, his individuality is not as significant as the part he plays in the grand scheme. And he proposes that so for everyone. Well, I'm sorry about the page break right here, but let me scroll this up some so that we could look at a little more of this canto before we move on. He is trying to make this connection between the present moment and the past and the future. Well, if you think about this crossing Brooklyn Ferry, there's another important ferry in mythology, and it's in the underworld, wherein Chiron takes the souls of the dead to the underworld, and it seems as if Whitman is intentionally trying to summon up that imagery from Greek mythology. But let's look at this just a little bit. The similitudes or similarities of the past and the future, the glories strung like beads on my smallest sights and hearings, on the walk in the street, the passage over the river, the current rushing so swiftly and swimming with me far away, the others that are to follow me, the ties between me and them, the certainty of others, the life, love, sight, hearing of others. So, of course, and I know you don't need me to say this, but I guess I'm going to anyway. The poem could be a poem taken in the line of it's not a Contemptus Mundi poem from the Middle Ages, where the Contemptus Mundi is like contempt for things of this world, but it's like a play on that, a shift on that, rather than contempt of things of this world, celebration and embracing things of this world. That's smart, and it is also part of the. Remember, this poem was also in Leaves of Grass, so it's part of the celebration of the American experience. The visual imagery in the next section furthers this idea of trying to pinpoint eternity, what is universal and transcendent, in the delicious layering of visual images as he is taking all of this in and trying to capture in language the motion and the immediacy of his experience. Okay, well, I'll try to wrap up here pretty quickly, though I know I cannot begin to capture the complexity of this poem. But I've moved on to Canto 5, and I'd like to dwell on this in Canto 6 for just a moment. In the previous canto, the one I skipped, Whitman reinforces this idea that he's connected with all ages in the present, all ages in the past, and then asks, what is the nature of that connection? And he doesn't really answer that. He doesn't know. I mean, I'm not saying he doesn't know, I guess, but he doesn't answer the question. He kind of sloughs it off because more important than what it is that it is. So he has this line, whatever it is, it avails not. Distance avails not. Place avails not. I too lived. Brooklyn of Ample Hill was mine. I too walked the streets of Manhattan Island. I too felt the curious abrupt questionings. I existed in crowds of people. I walked home late at night. And so he is connected, and he wants the reader to understand that yes, he had physical form, but it is not the physical form exclusively that he thinks gives him identity. Here in the next stanza, there's this line, my great thoughts as I suppose them, were they not in reality meager? So as a man, he, like everyone else, had some petty thoughts, and then check this out too, Nor is it you alone who knows what it is to be evil. I am he who knew what it was to be evil. I too knitted the old knot of contrariety, blabbed, blushed, resented, lied, stole, grudged, had guile, anger, lust, hot wishes. I dared not speak. Now check this. I'm going to scroll down a little. Was wayward, vain, greedy, shallow, sly, cowardly, malignant, the wolf, the snake, the hog, not wanting in me. Refusals, hates, postponements, meanness, laziness, none of these wanting in me. And that expression, not wanting in me, is they were not lacking. I did not want for those. I had them aplenty. Thus, in this particular canto, the poet is pushing forward with the idea that he's as human as everyone else. He's not separate and apart from the human experience. And then this next section where he kind of emphasizes his relationships. I was called by my nice name, by clear, loud voices of young men as they saw me approaching or passing. I saw many I loved in the street or ferry boat or public assembly, yet never told them a word. Lived the same life with the rest, the same old laughing, gnawing, sleeping. Played the part that an actor plays, the same old role. And as Whitman continues, he most definitely wants to layer in more visual imagery, but he wants also to pull the reader into the idea that whether we understand it or whether we don't understand it, we are all connected. And he could preach it, he could teach it, but we have to internalize that and see that our essence flows into the next person's essence. And then wrapping up the poem and something of a praise to the rivers, the city, the boats in the boatyard, as beautiful ministers that sit and wait and bring forth humanity and furnish this important part toward the connection of the entire soul. Okay, well, long enough. There are a few little readings of Crossing Brooklyn Ferry. Okay, thanks.